Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. I am Jennifer Zick, your host and today's moderator. We're thrilled to have you here with us. And if you happen to be based in Minnesota, in our hometown community, I hope today you're finding yourself somewhere warm, cozy, and safe. 3 of the 4 of us are here in Minnesota, and then John is out in California making fun of our blizzard and enjoying his lovely sunny weather. So wherever you are in the world today, we're delighted that you're spending this hour with us, and we're grateful for that. You've landed with Authentic Brand here for our Authentic Growth webinar series. And if you're not familiar with us, I just want to take a moment to introduce myself and then introduce this wonderful team of panelists today. So as I mentioned, I'm Jennifer, and I'm the founder and CEO of Authentic Brand. We are a community of fractional chief marketing officers that works with all different types of businesses around the country and sometimes beyond the US, helping them to overcome random acts of marketing and confidently take the next right step in their growth journey. We mostly work with businesses between 5 million and 100 million in revenue. And for those businesses, we become part of their leadership team as the head of marketing on a fractional or part-time flexible basis. And we're usually with them on that journey for 1 to 2 or more years, helping to build strong foundation, helping them feel confident about the mix, the hires, and the resourcing to create a really strong marketing engine, foundation, and program. And we just absolutely love doing that work for businesses that are B2B, B2C, e-commerce, distributor, and all different kinds of industries. So today we are going to cover a really important topic that touches down in every one of our client relationships, and that is demand generation. And those of you attending might have been drawn to the title, I hereby demand, because if you've ever been in a marketing seat or biz dev seat inside of a growth business, you've probably felt the pressure of creating demand, sometimes within the context of some unrealistic expectations or high hopes or wishful thinking. So today we're going to try to demystify the concept of demand gen, really break it down to what it means and how you can create it and how you can manage expectations in your business. And I also want to recognize that today we have a really diverse audience of attendees who represent entrepreneurs, their revenue leaders, marketers, agency partners, and perhaps marketing leaders within larger corporations. So we're so grateful you're here. And I hope that all of you get something tangible of value that you can walk away with, start a fresh conversation, or implement some new ideas inside of your business. But I did want you to understand that for most of the work we do at Authentic Brand, we're working with the executive team of these small entrepreneurial growth businesses. So much of what we share today will come through that lens. So with that, I want to get into the fun part of the conversation and introduce you to my esteemed panelists. And within this webinar growth series, we often draw upon our CMO experts, and sometimes we bring in third-party participants. Today, this is an all Authentic Brand team. So I'm delighted to spend time with each of them, and I would love to allow them to introduce themselves to you. So Barb, I will start with you. Let you say hello to our audience.
Hey everybody, I am Barb Birch. I am a fractional CMO, and I have been with Authentic Brand since 2017. Coming at you today, my background is really focusing on B2B professional services for the most part. So that's really kind of that's my vision for this topic today.
Thanks, Barb. Ruth, over to you.
Great, thanks, Jen. I'm Ruth Glazer, and I've been a fractional CMO with Authentic Brand for about 3 years. And I have worked with both B2B, mostly in the technology space, as well as B2C clients, direct to consumer and e-commerce is where I spend most of my time. But regardless of the industry or the business model, demand generation is a priority for every single client I work with. So I'm really excited for our conversation today.
Thank you, Ruth. And hi, John.
Hi, I'm from California. Thank you. And it's great to be here with my colleagues. They're amazing. They really are. My background is all B2B. I've been doing this for over 30 years at different levels and different places and consulted for dozens of companies. So I've seen a lot of stuff. And hopefully I learned something along the way, and happy to be here.
Thank you, John. One more little housekeeping note for our audience today as we jump in on this topic is if you look at the control panel of your webinar environment, you should see a Q&A feature. as well as a chat feature. I want to call your attention to the Q&A feature. As you're listening in today, if you have a question that you'd like to pose to the panelists, we're going to try to create some time at the end of the conversation to address some audience questions. So we would love for you to plug your question in there. I will be keeping a peripheral vision on the Q&A as it's coming through so that we can pull through some of your questions and hopefully give you even more value today. So, all right, let's dive in and get started on this demand hot topic. And Barb, I'm going to start with you since I picked on you first for intros. I'd like to just level set with the audience, and I'm going to start with you, but I'm going to invite Ruth and John to chime in on this too, because I think sometimes this is an area that's a little gray. How would you define the difference between lead generation and demand generation?
Great question. The difference really is that demand generation is designed to create awareness and interest, top of funnel. Lead gen really helps you turn those top of funnel prospects into more warm leads who eventually, you hope, become customers. I find it to be a little bit of a loaded question. There's a lot of dependencies, like how much brand awareness does your company already have? How far along are you with some of those foundational elements that we find necessary to level up your marketing? Technology, metrics, messaging, buyer's journey. Do you know who your buyers are? Do you know who you're targeting? Have you spent the time developing buyer personas? How are they finding you? All that to say that the difference is really, do you need to first build brand awareness to create the demand? Or can we move right into lead generation? Can we effectively find some low-hanging fruit to gather up some quick wins? Like, how much are you willing to budget for these efforts? So there's all these questions that kind of go hand in hand with this. And finally, are you willing to experiment in the approach? Marketing is full of experimentation, as we all know. There's not a one-size-fits-all approach to lead gen. If all these elements are in place, gathering leads down the funnel can have a much quicker turn, I think, on the sales cycle than if we're working on what we like to call spray and pray approach, doing random things. You know, we get direction all the time from leaders that say, hey, I just saw this, can we try it? You know, and it's not attached to any kind of business strategy whatsoever. And it's like, how do you respond to that? And as a buyer, today, it's becoming increasingly more and more important that we personalize their experience. If I get something in my inbox, we're busy, our inboxes are inundated and our attention spans are short. So if I feel somebody's marketing doesn't apply directly to me, I've moved on. I'm unsubscribing. So with demand gen, you know, what is like when that's dialed in and people are excited about your brand awareness is dialed in, the leads are going to come quicker and the sales cycle will be shortened. So that's kind of a long answer to the question, but I do feel like it's pretty loaded.
Yeah, I see those terms often used interchangeably, but they're not the same thing. Ruth or John, you want to chime in on how you see that concept play out with clients you work with?
Sure, I agree with everything Barb just said, and I tend to think of lead generation as that bottom of the funnel, and demand gen is everything that it takes before that to get to lead generation. And I think people often conflate the two and want to skip right to lead generation without having done all the necessary steps to create that awareness and that, you know, demand for your product or service. So that is where, you know, a lot of times I've seen when we come in, that's where we need to focus first, because the tactics might be being executed and they're not getting the results that are needed. And it's because we haven't laid that groundwork yet to create that integrated marketing strategy that's going to ultimately yield those leads.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think every company has its own cocktail, right? And so Barbara's exactly right. When she went down the laundry list of things that need to be done, you can't get to where you want to get to without doing what Barb told you. So what Barb and Ruth are leading to really is a marketing effort that is like running a lab. And you take those things that have the highest probability based on your experiences, and that unique situation you're staring at. You say, I think I'll start with this, but I'll scale later. But I'll figure it out now, but then I'll scale later based on the process I figure out. But everything that Ruth and Barb are telling you are absolutely necessary for you to optimize your marketing dollar.
And this leads us really into the next question, which is like the money question. Every CEO and CFO I speak with who are struggling in their organizations with what we lovingly call random acts of marketing, they're feeling the pain. Marketing feels like the black hole they're throwing money in and wondering what they're getting in ROI. And they want to know, after experiencing some of that tactical pain, how long is it going to take? Like, yes, maybe we need to create demand, but what we really need are more at bats. We need leads. But the four of us on this call and many listening, they know that creating demand takes time. So Ruth, why are there no quick fixes to this process?
That is a great question, and one we run into all the time. You know, it would be great if all it took to be successful was to build a really quality product or offer a great solution or service that people would immediately be aware of and want to purchase. But it's never that easy, right? It's not like Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. It takes a lot of work to get people aware of it and understand what it is we're offering. So we have to help people know that you exist, what the offering is, and what it means to them, why they should care about it at all. In marketing, we talk about something called the rule of 7, which some of us think should be like the rule of 15 or the rule of 20. But essentially what that means is that it's going to take a prospective buyer at least 7 interactions with your brand before they make that purchase decision. So those interactions or touch points could be anything from, seeing you at an industry event, watching you on a webinar, getting an email, reading a blog, all those different things, all those different tactics that we do. It's going to take 7 of those before somebody is ready to buy. So to create those touch points, like I said earlier, it's going to take an integrated marketing strategy that's consistently reaching the right people, so your target audience, and it's speaking to them in a way that resonates with them. And that takes time to plan, it takes time to execute, and then it takes time for those brand interactions to actually occur to ultimately get the results you need. And this is all assuming that you've already got that solid foundation built. So you already know who your ideal customer is. You're not trying to be everything to everyone. You know what that customer's pain points are and how your solution uniquely solves those and is better than what the competitors are offering. And you're delivering this info in places where your ideal customers are and in a way that really resonates with them. So none of that is something we can do in a week, right? It's going to take time to get all of those things to occur.
John and Barb, how would you respond, or how do you respond on this question of, how quickly can all of this happen? What are some of the experiences you've had or cautionary words that you would offer to?
Well, I have a cautionary position I'll take, which is you're dealing with the most sophisticated buyer that's ever existed. These buyers are more informed than we could have ever imagined by 2023. And for a lot of us who grew up in the tech industry, like myself, we used to get away with a lot more sloppiness than you can get away with today. You better be on point. You better know who your buyer is. You better know what the pain is that they're dealing with. You got to know what they're aspiring to go do. And you have to speak to that. They don't care about what we're doing as a vendor. What they care about is how we're going to benefit them first. And so the faster we get to that and we start educating them so that they're prepared to be a buyer. In B2B, Gartner says that 83% of the buyer's activity has nothing to do with you, the vendor. Only 17% does. So we have to take a lot of effort to convince that buyer that we're there to help and educate them make the best decision, and from a consultative standpoint, not from a transaction standpoint. So just remember, most sophisticated buyer the world's ever seen, whatever you learned 20, 30 years ago in marketing isn't true anymore.
Yeah, and I would just piggyback off of that. I mean, Ruth really did a great job at covering like holistically everything that we need to be looking at. I would just say with respect to the buyer's journey, it's never been more important to revisit that, because what you need to do is we have to have content built out for each phase of that buyer's journey, and making sure that you've got a platform for like every single piece of content that you need, whether it's a blog, whether it's a case study. And it's, case studies are difficult, they take a long time. So it's really level setting on like, okay, this year we want to focus on XYZ. We need to revisit, did our buyers change? Did their journey and how they're getting to us change? Think about COVID. Like that changed the way a lot of people buy. They don't necessarily want to talk to anybody anymore. So we have to find ways as marketers to get at them in much more creative ways, and provide value for them along their entire journey.
Absolutely. And I love to jump from moderator to co-panelist now and then in these conversations, because I, of course, came from a marketing background and lead this team of brilliant marketers, but also because Authentic Brand is drinking our own champagne as it relates to this topic and building strategic marketing foundation. One example of that is that when I started Authentic Brand and it was just me and a vision for growth, I knew that if I wanted to create inbound demand, that I would need to start creating content, quality content regularly, consistently for a defined audience, and that it would probably take 3 years for all of that consistent content to start to organically generate some inertia, right? And that was exactly true. It took 3 years of building a team, delivering great content, continuing to do that today. And now Authentic Brand has grown through mostly inbound demand as a result of that. But that's a long tail journey in terms of investing for growth. And it is a true investment. And so I speak with a lot of CEOs and entrepreneurs who want to live in the land of the tactics and want marketing to come in and, rebuild their sales deck. But that's just one piece of content, right? And above all of that is that foundation you talked about so beautifully, Ruth. And we're going to dig in more on what that means in terms of setting up strategic health for the marketing engine to build demand. But let me tee off the next question. I'm going to come to you, John, on this. How can marketing take a lead role in not only fostering demand across all of those customer life stages, not just at the top of the funnel? But so let me rephrase this a little bit. Marketing is often thought of just as lead generation, just as bring in the leads and sales will take them from there and then we'll move them through the organization. But really, the role of marketing can be really strategically supportive of the entire customer journey. So can you dig in on that a little bit with us and help us understand how marketing aligns through that journey?
Well, Barb sort of already answered the question, but I'll go over it again.
Give us your perspective. We're going deeper here. Dig deeper.
Yeah, could you get some dumb CMOs I can be on here with? I'd appreciate it. No, look. So the thing is that from the top of the funnel down to the bottom of the funnel, marketing has to be involved. Marketing has to look at itself as a revenue engine who is collaborating with sales in order to create revenue at the end of the day. So to think of you as I'm going to throw it over the wall and walk away, that's nonsense. That's 20 years, 30 years ago type stuff. We don't need that. And you're not going to survive thinking that way. So the way you want to look at this, amazingly enough, is talk to your current customers. So if you go to your current customers and you say, why us? Why did you choose us? What was it about our company that stood out versus our competition? And who else did you talk to? And you start digging into that and start asking the right questions, then you can start building the right content that fits the journey along the way. Whether you're at the top, which is around awareness, whether you're meeting them where they're going, where your sales team is doing discovery and they need supporting artifacts to help them be successful. that needs to be done too. And then when they get down to decision time, what content is going to help them make a decision? Like, for instance, I don't know, a happy client that did a video testimonial. So, you know, when you start thinking this way, because here's the thing everybody forgets is that when you go into a large organization, you're not talking to the person you're talking to. You're talking to a buying team of 4 to 8 people. And guess what? When you walk out of the building, who are they talking to? They're talking to themselves. So the more you arm them with the right messaging and the right marketing pieces so that they can communicate and get happy with you, the better off you're going to be, and the more velocity you're going to see behind a sales opportunity.
Absolutely. Let me add another dimension to this question as I lob it over for commentary from the rest of the team here. We're currently entering 2023 in a time when we're in the midst of what I would call a recession-sensitive market. And we've been talking amongst our CMO team in our mindshare meetings about the need more than ever to focus resources and efforts on client retention, satisfaction, advocacy, growth, while of course keeping the wheels going on net new demand creation and lead generation, but knowing that the top of the funnel might be filling a little more slowly right now while people are in a state of hold off on big decisions, right? So let's talk about the role of marketing, even after they've come through the bottom of the decision funnel and now they're a client. How can marketing be creating demand within existing customer relationships?
Well, I'll just say one thing quickly, Jennifer, and thank you for saying that, because you sort of teed me up for something I wanted to talk about, which was trust. And the issue is when you're doing business development, there is that trust is the currency that's trying to be developed at the front end. The thing about your customers is you already have that. So then your opportunity is to optimize that relationship with that customer, to look at other ways you can help them because of that trust, and then take that trust and turn it into things like the video and case studies and everything else, so that the new people can see that and say, oh, they trust you, I should too. That's
right. I call that amplified trust, right?
Mm-hmm. Harnessing
the power of trust and amplifying it to other audiences. Ruth, it looked like you had something to add here.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually going to touch on exactly that part of marketing that is often overlooked where it can help quite a bit is post-sale. So it's about increasing, the lifetime value of a relationship with a customer. So in the B2C world, it's really about delivering on the promise that you made in marketing. And actually that's true in the B2B world as well, right? So we've sold a product or a service. Now we need to make sure that the customer is happy with what they've purchased. And we can do some things to help measure and facilitate that, help onboard them, help measure after the fact how they're feeling about it, and help to build that loyalty and advocacy that we can then translate into some of those tactical pieces that John mentioned earlier, customer testimonials and videos and so on and so forth. And the other thing that, especially in the B2C world that we can do is look at ways when we have a customer who's already trusting us, who's already happy with us, what are the upsell and cross-sell opportunities that we can do to that already engaged customer base? It's a lot easier to market and sell to that group of people than to go out and find the new folks.
Right. The rule of 7 or 15 or 30 touches has already been applied in that relationship. So now it's about the right touch at the right time to extend that trust, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I would just, on that topic, say that I think that in the world of marketing, we've tended to be better at nurturing those current customers on the B2C side than maybe we are on the B2B side. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely some opportunity.
Yeah. And I think perhaps one of the reasons that's true, Barb, is that in the B2C landscape, there often isn't a sales organization. It's right. Marketing driven down to the customer experience. In a B2B world, you usually have a pretty robust sales organization that's part of that life cycle. And historically, as John talked about 20, 30 years ago, and even still today, in many organizations, there's this sense of on the sales side, now I own the relationship. from the point of sale forward. And I've spent so much of my time and energy educating entrepreneurial teams to think about one revenue organization, right? That we need to be working together through all of these customer touch points. And it's very self-defeating culturally to award credit only to marketing for this activity or only to sales for this win, when really we need to be building that demand, winning the business, and serving the business together hand in hand. So we segued really naturally into the next part of the conversation, which has to do with those three pieces. So I'm gonna back us up a little bit to articulate this and step us back in a little bit differently into the same topic. So a lot of the businesses we work with are not super mature when we start working with them from a strategic marketing perspective. So we do a lot of education with them about what components need to exist in a healthy modern marketing function, and talking about three really key focus areas for how budgets should be established and teams should be resourced and activities should be organized. And we talk about three categories, like creating brand awareness in the market, starting to create those trust engines, creating demand generation, like becoming a magnet to pull people through into experience, and then customer retention, which we were just talking about. So those are kind of three big buckets. So right now, as you think about the clients you're working with and the clients you have worked with, do you find that when you step into a growth company, they might be stronger in just one area or one dimensional? How do you help them to think about bringing marketing across all those dimensions of the life cycle? And I'm going to just bring that back to Barb again and ask you to walk us through that. Like, what are some of the conversations you have with clients and thinking more holistically about the role of marketing in customer lifecycle demand?
Well, as I was saying earlier, even if you have your brand awareness dialed in, there's still this need to actively continue doing brand awareness, which in effect will generate interest or demand and thereby create leads. The one thing that we haven't touched on, well, we have touched on, we just started to touch on, is customer retention. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about that here, because this year is one of the more important, times for companies to focus their efforts here. And as we were talking earlier, we really just need to continue to nurture and provide value-added content at every stage, so that they can continue to understand the value of the relationship and what we have to offer them. And I think both John and Ruth touched on cross-selling and upselling. What do we already have that we can focus on to get them to buy more of or to buy differently? With the economy the way it is today, both Forrester and Gartner have mentioned that the number one areas for CMOs to be focusing on this year is customer retention. And they've been predicting this since last fall. And they're saying that more than half of the US consumers are going to reduce their online spending this year. That's a big deal. It's grabbing new customers this year is going to be a bigger lift than working to retain the ones that you have and getting them on board to buy more, and just remain with you in what they're buying today and helping them understand the value in what they have today. So the low-hanging fruit in your organization, and many this year, is going to be current customers, really taking the time to nurture those relationships and build and add value with that. Don't have a marketing loyalty program in place, perhaps this is the year to implement one.
Yeah.
So marketing plans really need to include, as part of that strategy, all those foundational elements we talked about, like the buyer's journey, revisiting the buyer's journey, revisiting your content library and determining what you need to continue to add value to the customers that you have, while trying to bring in and demand or create demand and bring leads in. But finding out where your customers are hanging out today might be different than where they were before. And from here, just developing a much sounder, more efficient strategy to capture those leads, which then can bring obviously a quicker return on your marketing dollar investment and shorten that sales cycle.
Well, I want to come back to you, Barb, on something in terms of like practical advice for small businesses that have been sales driven, that haven't thought about having marketing come alongside and support existing customer relationships. I want to put a pin in that for a minute, because John, when we were talking about this upcoming webinar, talking about this topic, I think it might have been you that talked about how to grab the attention of a more high intent buyer versus a lower intent buyer. Am I remembering correctly that we talked about that?
Yes. Yes, and thank you for remembering it was me.
Okay.
I think when we look at in your mind, if you're holding the idea of a funnel, then I would split the funnel and say on one side you've got the low intent buyer, and those people are like tourists. They're going to bounce off your website. They're going to come to your website. They're going to make you feel like something's happening. It's not happening for a long time. The people you want to get in front of are the high intent buyers, and those people will send you signals. And they might send you signals through HubSpot. They might send them as a marketing automation platform. They might send them through Zoom information if you're using that. And they're taking certain actions, and those actions are letting you know, hey, I'm getting serious about this. And so to me, in 2023, this is what I was telling the team, in 2023, I think if it were me, that's where I probably spent a disproportionate amount of my time and resources, is going after those high intent buyers.
Okay. Being more discerning with your resources rather than chasing everybody who looks like they're touching into the brand. I think that's wise. And Barb, I want to bounce back to you real quickly on this, because I've seen you walk into several of our client accounts that have been founder-led, sales-driven. They maybe have had a marketing coordinator, but they haven't had a strategic marketing leader. And they may not have a well-organized modern sales team. They might be territorial, not wanting to share their data. They might not have a well-organized CRM that gives marketing even visibility into the customer situation. Like, how have you walked them through the journey of letting marketing have a seat at the table to help them help themselves? What are some of the things that need to exist for that to work?
I think really engaging with them on the overall business strategy and helping them understand, like, okay, well, help me understand your goals. And, if it was 2023 and we're talking about their business goals and they've got a goal to increase their customer base by, 25 or 30%, I might ask them to dial that back and let's talk about the state of the economy and how do you think we're going to do that? Because here's what I'm seeing. And I think I would start the conversation there. I really want to make sure that leaders are allowing marketing to have that seat at the table, because we need to attach whatever strategy we're doing to what the business goals are.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question?
And I think I would supplement that by saying, in my experience, a lot of entrepreneurial businesses have grown by like, throw a target number at the wall and let's all work as hard as we can to hustle our way to hit that number, without understanding all the leading indicators and the metrics and the KPIs that actually should help to guide and shape your growth goals and vision. So I think it's been really critical in our growth business and with our clients to have marketing working with sales to really look at the data and the performance history and the marketplace in order to set realistic goals in terms of what can we expect in terms of new demand, in what new audiences can we feasibly reach at what pace, based on our historical ability to do that and our current reality in terms of resourcing, budget, and appetite for growth, right? So Ruth, I haven't heard from you in a while. Is there anything you want to add on this note before we move to the next little segment?
Well, I was just thinking about, like, back to the original question of, focusing across all the three main areas of brand awareness, demand gen, and customer retention. And I spoke earlier about cross-sell and upsell to the existing customer client base. But the other thing to remember is that we can market to them as well in a way that's providing value, so that not every communication is a sales communication, right? And there's an example of a company that I'm fond of the work that they do. Databox, it's a dashboards to kind of easily digest your marketing information. And one of the things that they do on a regular basis is they release new templates for how to create your dashboard. And there aren't charges for that. It's just a free thing that they do to continue to evolve the value of their offering. And I think especially in today's economic climate, those are things that marketers can help companies look at. How do we continue to add value to the customer base that we already have and delight them before we're trying to sell them more or additional or the next big sale? So, looking at providing value versus just the transactional aspect of it too, I think is something where marketing can definitely play a role.
I love that. And in a really tactical, applicable case point on that, we're seeing more clients, and even at Authentic Brand, we're making the choice to give away more content to the broader market and remove some of the gated forms and the things on our assets that we thought were helping with lead gen, a couple of years ago. But in reality, when brands are willing to give generously of their wisdom and their resources, creating that trust that actually becomes that magnetic force of demand is so much easier than putting obstacles in the way of the people who want to learn whether they can trust you, right? So one example of that at Authentic Brand is we're in the process of ungating all of our recorded on-demand webinars because they're free for anyone who registers in the first place. We don't want to create a barrier to people accessing this valuable content. And we want to build that trust faster, more seamlessly. And we actually want to help them, whether they ever work with us or not. We want to be helpful. So those are great opportunities to think about your brand and the trust that you're creating.
Yeah, I think if I could jump in, a couple of things. Number one is, I love what Barb said about making her way to the strategy table, because I think that when organizations basically tell marketing people, stand up against the wall, you can't sit at the big person's table, you're asking for trouble. So I remember a product management meeting I went to 25 years ago where somebody came in, the product manager, and said, we're going to sell this many units in the next year. And I said, that's not possible. And I went, and I'm a very optimistic person, but I wasn't crazy. And so I said, here's why, because they had too much competition. They weren't the leader in the category. And I was right. And it was good because we basically looked, they weren't going to do poorly. It's just, don't get crazy. Look at your category. How much competition do you have? Understand what you're doing, because marketing and sales cannot fix a bad product or reputation. And so these are the kind of things we have to understand. There are no silver bullets. We are working as a team across the company. It is a one revenue team. What is it that each of us will be doing to help? I think that's very important. So thank you. I just want to jump in and say that because I thought what Barb said about getting into the strategy discussion is spot on.
Awesome. So good. And we could go deep on this topic, but I want to cover the whole range of what we set up for today. So I'm going to do a little bit of a flip of the coin here, because we've just doubled down on enforcing that nothing about demand gen and subsequent lead gen is easy, fast, magical, light switch, faucet, right? Like these are the things that everybody wishes it would be, but it's just not. And so the other side of that coin is that there are probably a lot of marketers and salespeople on this call who are under the gun, under pressure from upper management to produce results, to find low-hanging fruit, to do the stuff that quickly drives demand. So let's think about those folks and feel their pain with them for a moment and think, how could we help them look differently maybe at their situation to find some opportunities to move a little more quickly on demand gen and lead generation. So Ruth, where have you seen maybe some faster successes in this area?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to address the concept of low-hanging fruit, because my understanding is that you still have to climb the tree to get to it. So there's still a lift. It's not like a switch that you're just going to turn on. But there are some sort of more tactical things that you can get started more quickly as you're developing all of those other strategies that we talked about earlier. So if we haven't beaten this horse to death, I'm going to say cross-sell and upsell existing clients. That is always my number one way to quickly generate leads or demand. The second tactic that I use are referrals, and you need to be really intentional about that. So you have to ask for it. You have to, in some cases, you have to incentivize for it. In the B2C world, for example, I'm sure you've all ordered things online and you get an email to get 20% off your next order if you refer a friend. So things of that nature can be very effective. And again, it goes back to focusing on making sure that your delivering on your original marketing promises and you've got happy customers. And then you can ask for referrals. And then I would say doubling down on what's working. So we've done this in multiple clients that I've had where let's say that we have an ad campaign that's bringing in good prospects or resulting in good sales. You need to spend more on that. And sometimes it's surprisingly difficult to convince the controllers of budget to do that. But if you invest more on something that's working, you're going to get better results. You're going to make more money on it. You have to keep a really close eye on that, however, because you're going to reach that point of diminishing returns, right? So that would be another way that I would go about it. And then this last one is something that I just sort of recently rediscovered, and that's reusing efforts or redoing efforts that have worked in the past. So for one of my clients, we had created a really nice and valuable piece of content a couple years ago. And just a few weeks ago, we re-promoted it on LinkedIn, and that resulted in immediate conversions and immediate new leads. And it took really nothing more than making a post on LinkedIn, sort of promoting that piece of existing content. So, look at what's worked in the past. What can we maybe dust off and redeploy and do again? And then, in the B2C world, I think people frequently sort of revert back to, well, let's offer a promotion or a sale, which is nearly always going to generate some quick sales. But I do want to put a little caution on that, because you don't want to train your customers to only buy when the product is discounted. And we work really hard to build up our brand and build up our reputation and the value of the products and services that we sell. So the promotions, I would just be very cautious of and use them very judiciously. So those are just a few things that I have seen be successful. The other kind of comment I would make about it is these can't work in isolation for a long time. They're not sustainable or scalable. So you need to make sure that you're doing all those other things to build out that holistic marketing strategy and execute that plan, rather than relying on a Google ad campaign that brings you some good results for a month or two.
Brilliant. Well, and I want to hear from all of our panelists on this topic, but I have one more kind of line of question that I think would segue in beautifully here and keep us on time. And that is, and I'll start with you, John, on this, because Ruth teed this up beautifully with the word sustainable. And a lot of the work we do at Authentic Brand is about creating sustainable, healthy growth, which means doing the hard work, right? So how can businesses think about lead generation programs that are generating sustainable demand and helping them reach their growth?
Okay, well, first of all, I don't like following Ruth because it's hard.
It is hard.
Look, Ruth's right. When you get with the customers, I've heard this many times, is customers to say to a vendor, I didn't know you did that. The communication we think we're getting through is not getting through. And there are tactics that you can use underneath the understanding that you need to segment like crazy. You need to be fanatical about segmentation. And then once you do that and you get your list cleaned up and you're practicing good hygiene, then you got to take a look at, well, what kind of tactics can we employ? And some of those Ruth went through, Barb has touched on some. Some of them you could have some fun with. You can give it a try. So for instance, if you've got someone in a B2B high ticket item world, advertise to them on LinkedIn. Reinforce what it is that you're doing from the sales side with something from the marketing side. This is how marketing and sales can work hand in hand. So there are trigger events. So for instance, people change jobs, get promotions, what have you. They might leave one organization that's your customer, go to another one. And what happens anytime a C-level person goes to a new organization? Well, they better make a difference in 90 days if we hire the wrong person. So that's how that goes. So when that person goes to the other team, we want to be there and say, we're here to help any way that we can, because again, we already have that currency of trust between us. But as far as consistent revenue, you're going to have to prioritize and figure out what are the things that you know are working. Again, talk to your customers. How did they find you? How did they hear about you first? I trust and I don't trust automation. I think it's good. It's good to know, but you're trying to trust their memory as to what happened. Well, I think if you ask them person to person, they're going to remember. They're going to tell you the thing they remembered the most, that made the biggest impact, and that's more of a human approach. And a lot of social media you can't track anyway. So I think from an overall standpoint, what I would say, especially as a startup, is do a few things really well. And as you move along, start looking at other things you could do to sort of round out your strategy.
Yes. I love that. Do a few things really well. And I think that's where a lot of the businesses we work with have gotten over their skis and their ability to even consider how to go to market strategically, because they have been trying to be all things to all people and treating all revenue as equal growth opportunity when it's not. And so at the end of the day, as fast as marketing moves and changes, and as many levers as there could be to pull around demand gen and lead gen, the fundamentals have to be in place. And that is a clear understanding, and Ruth already spoke about this, of who matters to us, why should we matter to them very clearly, and then how do we intersect their universe in a natural habitat in a way that adds value before we're selling anything and earns trust, so that we can become, be on their radar for consideration. And then when they're part of us and they've decided to engage us, then how do we over deliver on our brand promise and not lose trust by under delivering or breaking that brand promise, right? That is the story of marketing, really. There's a million ways we get it done, but those fundamentals still are crucial. I want to let Barb and Ruth kind of cycle in on any last thoughts here before we turn it over to some really great questions coming in from the audience. So Barb, Ruth, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I would say, think about our internal customers as well. You touched on this earlier, Jen, building that alignment with sales. Working with your sales team to gather that voice of customer through their eyes and what they're seeing in the marketplace, because things change dramatically year over year, and really starting to build that alignment together and them to trust you and what you're going out there trying to do, helping them have some, empathetic value around what you as a marketer is trying to do. They're only going to have that if you've at first built a relationship with them, listen to them, and tried to implement some things and ideas that they've got around how they're going to support the growth goals, or what they need from marketing to support their growth goals and why.
Yeah, it's definitely a feedback loop that has to exist. I call that the connective tissue. And in most companies, depending on what kind of company you are, sales, marketing, customer experience, product design, whatever those things are, there has to be that feedback connective loop, because we're getting different insights based on the lens we're looking through in the relationship, right? Ruth, anything you want to add?
Just to reinforce what both you and John said, and this is very counterintuitive. I have found in a lot of smaller or growth organizations, and it's to get really focused. So while you may be able to do all these great things for all kinds of different audiences, really hone in on who is it that you are focusing on. Where are you making the most money? What are the best candidates? And instead of trying to be everything to everyone, knowing where you can be the best thing to the best audience is really important.
I think that's great, Ruth. And what I would say is either get focused or your investors will.
Oh, good one.
That's strong words, John, strong words, but true. Very true. Well, and with that, I'd love to flip the script a little bit and bring in some questions from our audience. And thank you, audience, for interacting with us here. These are all great questions. I am going to start with one that we actually see quite a bit in our line of business, which is a lot of the growth companies that we work with. They're either going to grow by making acquisitions, or they're going to grow by being acquired and integrated at some point. So what are your thoughts and tips on creating successful strategy, managing a company's brand? And I think all of you have been through this in your time with Authentic Brand or before. So managing the company's brand after acquiring one or two other companies. Actually, we just did a webinar on this for the audience member that asked that. There's a recorded webinar on managing through M&A on our sites. So if you want to go deep, go there. But let me ask the panelists today for your thoughts.
Can you ask the question again, Jen?
Yep. Tips on creating successful strategy, managing a company's brand after they've acquired one or two other companies.
So I think first off, figuring out, the brands that were acquired, how can we as marketers collaborate with the other marketers within those organizations and create a team with, a variety of specialties to add value to the organization in different ways, teaching and training and building up everybody and building one team. If the companies that were acquired don't have marketing, jumping in right away as a marketer to learn as much as you can about those two companies that have been acquired and adding value immediately through building a strategy, understanding the business goals. Now, what are we? Are we rebranding? There's so many questions that we can step in and add value with right away.
Yeah. And this could be a whole different webinar, so we won't go all the way down this topic, but I would say whenever you're integrating two different businesses, no matter how closely aligned they might be to begin with, you have to start back at the beginning of articulating the brand and then solidifying the foundation and redesigning the go-to-market strategy. You start at the beginning, like, has this acquisition redefined our purpose?
Right.
Has it changed how we articulate the life-changing impact we're bringing to the world? If so, we need to redefine that purpose together. And then we need to redefine who matters to us and why should we matter to them in new ways. And then the right mix and then the right tactics, right? Easier said than done. It's not a simple task. It's a long-term initiative, but.
Well, there are a lot of companies that aren't very good at it. And so that gives you an opportunity. If this happens to you, I've been on both sides of it. You got to have a really clear-cut plan. You got to work that plan every day, every week. You got to make sure things are happening with the people that need to be communicated with. You've got a whole communications part. You've got the whole visioning part, which is what you were talking about, Jennifer. And then you've got the organizational part. So it's complicated. You need a clear-cut plan. It takes a lot of planning and a lot of discipline. But if you do it right, you come out on the other side a stronger organization.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
All right, we have an awesomely active audience today. And audience, I'm going to apologize right now that we can't get through all of your questions, but I'm also going to offer my inbox. By the way, all of the invites you got for today's event came through my email address. So if you have a question we don't get to today, feel free to throw it into my inbox and I will try to get some CMO input for you on that. I'm going to jump over to Jim's question in the Q&A. We've talked today about the buyer's journey a lot, including, John, your comment about it often including a committee of 4 to 8 people who are going to make that purchase decision. So when you look at those 4 to 8 people, they all represent different functions within the business, right? And the composition can be variable by vertical or companies within a vertical. So how does a marketing team best approach all those stakeholders and all the content they might need from a crawl, walk, run standpoint? Where do you start with that? It's a matrix.
I love this question, Jim. Thank you. If you take a look at the buying team, you're normally going to have 4 or 5 different personas involved, or 4 or 5 different roles. You might have the buyer, you might have the business buyer, you're going to have the solutions buyer, you're going to have the tech buyer, and then you're going to have the financial buyer. All these buyers are different personas working together to decide if you are the right choice. And so, for instance, I might get excited about the benefits you're talking to me about. That doesn't cut it if we get to the tech buyer and the tech buyer says, I can't integrate this with everything else we have. So all these people have to get together in this imaginary meeting that's happening over time, where they're talking to each other and they're saying, oh yeah, sure, it can do that. Okay, fine. Oh, it can't do that. We need to dig it into some more. So this This is like a super conversation going on inside the organization between 4 or 5 different personas that are taking care of their needs within their department as it serves the organization, and they're working with each other to make that final decision. And so you got to serve all of them, because if they get into a meeting and one of them says, this doesn't work for me, you're out.
Yeah, I'm encountering that right now with one of our clients, because our known persona that we work with is a marketing leader. And we have discovered through our work with these various marketing leaders that they have an internal audience that they need to sell on the solution. And so we have moved from just trying to get the awareness among our target persona to how do we help them sell within their organization? What tools can we provide to them?
That's right.
Can we be in meetings with their group so that we're presenting and addressing some of the, in this case, like John said, technical needs? We run into security issues and compliance issues a lot. And so, empowering and giving tools to a prospect so that they can then sell on your behalf internally is also a role that marketing can play and really has to play in these complex selling situations.
So true. Okay, there's another question here I want to get to, and it's a powerful question, and we face it every single day. And it's from Mary. And I'm gonna start by answering Mary to say part of the reason Authentic Brand exists is to help address this question at the C-suite level. So here's the question: what are your tips or tricks for level setting the C-suite on reality? And that might be about the market opportunity, the product challenges, the competition. When you've got a C-suite who's given a big goal, but you might have some insights that tell you that might not be achievable. How do you level set with them, especially if you're not on the C-suite? Any tips?
Data, as much data as you can use to show, what do they say? Past behavior is a predictor of future results. So, make sure that you've got an eye on the right metrics so that you can say, well, we need X number of visits to our website that translates into X number of downloads that translates into X number of qualified leads, and so on and so forth. So at any time you can use data to support your argument, that can be really helpful. The other panelists are a lot smarter than I am and have quoted Forrester and Gartner and studies of that nature. And so some of those kind of credential insight groups can be very helpful in level setting and helping the C-suite understand what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Ruth is spot on. And I always go back to this buyer's journey, and there's plenty of templates out there that kind of, if you don't know how to build one, that really showcase to a senior leadership team all of the steps that it takes to bring somebody through a funnel. We've got a very basic funnel, let's say awareness, consideration, purchased. There's many more facets to that funnel that you can build out in a matrix to kind of showcase, like, here's all the hoops we have to jump through before we get to that point. So I think, that's usually been pretty eye-opening when I've leveraged that within a senior leadership team.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything that Barb and Ruth are saying is correct. I think that you have to over communicate.
Yeah.
You're going to have to over communicate. Don't assume they get it. Keep going back and talking to them again, reminding them what the metrics are that you're driving and what data you're using, to Ruth's point. And you just got to say, look, the funny thing is, I think it's because people in marketing, we have fun every now and then. And there are other departments where you don't see them having so much fun that's obvious to everybody. Although I think they have fun in finance. I don't know what those people are doing, but I do think they have fun. But they have, you have to build a finance department just like you have to build a marketing department. There are financial responsibilities and accountabilities for the organization that must be met, or organization can't move forward. Same thing with marketing. We've got to build it in appropriate for the market, appropriate for our organization, and it takes time.
Boy, I wish we could answer all of the thoughtful questions that our audience is bringing forward. And I'm sorry, we're getting to the point where we need to put a bow on today's content and make sure everybody gets to their next meetings on time. But I just want to say, you know, every time we talk about demand, we end up with a lot of participants in the conversation. It's a real hot button topic, and it has been for a very long time, and it probably will continue to be. And if I had $1 for every time a CEO or CFO told me, hey, if you can just tell me how long it's going to take from the time I put $1 into the marketing program until I get X ROI dollars out the end of it, then we'll have an unlimited budget. But those same CEOs and CFOs give it 90 days to prove out, even though we've said it'll take 18 to 24 months, right? So this is the cycle of insanity we hope to help solve at Authentic Brand. And if you're living in that cycle of insanity, we would love to be a trusted partner with you on that journey or a resource. All of our content is free and ungated. So tap it and let us know how we can help you. And thank you for spending some time with us today. And thank you to my panelists and CMO friends. I just love learning from you every chance that I get. It's a joy to be with you. So with that, we'll wrap up for now and make sure this recap gets out to all of our registered attendees. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.